What's up, Photoshop fam? I'm Rick Navarro, and this is the Pixel Laundry Photoshop Academy. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Guys, I hope you're staying safe during this crazy time. I've had to take a few weeks off to kind of get some priorities in order, get my mind right. So I hope that you're doing the same. I hope you're staying safe. Hope you're staying inside and listening to our government officials and all of those who are probably much smarter than we are about these health topics and not getting too caught up in all of the internet hype. But that being said, at the time of this recording, it's March 30th and the coronavirus pandemic is in full effect. I'm trying to stay in the studio with my family at my house and stay safe. I'm not doing video today, but I wanted to get back to you guys because I feel like it's been way too long. So I'm trying to get back into it and to create for you guys something that will keep your mind off of all of the nonsense that's going on out in the world. Welcome to the Pixel Laundry Photoshop Academy Photoshop 101 course. My name is Rick Navarro. I am your teacher for this course. Today's lesson is on gradients. This is lesson number 5 in a larger Photoshop 101 series that I have. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you can be up to date on all of the most current videos that we're putting out that are a part of this course and are about teaching Photoshop through and through for all of you guys out there. So today we're going to be talking about gradients. What are they? How do you use them? What do you do with them? This is a continuation of what we've been talking about previously. Okay, so gradients, first and foremost, there's an actual gradient tool. This is the image we're going to be working on today, and there's a gradient tool right here. If you hit the hotkey G, or you can see it come up there on the screen, this is the hotkey for your gradient tool. And your gradient tool is going to create gradients based off of your gradient parameters that are up here. If we go back to the basic default, it's usually on your foreground and your background gradient, and that is going to be based off of what colors are in here. So if I double click here and change that, I'm going to notice that it's going to change up in my gradient tool. Okay. Now you can edit those colors there. You can also edit them here, which is going to bring up your gradient editor. And I'm going to talk about that here in just a second. But in the meantime, if I wanted to do a gradient, I just go back to my gradient tool based off of my parameters and my settings here. And then I'm going to draw a gradient on top of here. Let's go back. Let's change this. Okay, so once I have my colors picked, then I can go ahead and drag and drop my gradient. And if you'll notice, I get this little point and click dragging kind of line right here. And that's going to show you the distance of the fade or the transition of the gradient. Now, I've mentioned in several series before this that we want to work non-destructively. So first and foremost, I'm going to go ahead and make a duplicate of that background. If I have the background selected and I apply the gradient, notice what happened here. I've basically ruined my background. So I don't want to do that. So I'm going to back out of that, Command Z, and I'm going to create a duplicate layer. And even one step further, I'm going to go ahead and create a brand new layer by hitting Command Shift and N for new. And I'm going to go ahead and label this gradient. And on this layer, I'm going to go ahead and grab my gradient tool, and then I can apply my gradient. If I hold Shift, notice what happens. If I click here and kind of drag around, it's basically kind of free forming it and allowing me to go in any direction. The moment I hit Shift, it's going to start to lock and pop into place into degrees, 90, 45, and 0, okay? So if I want a straight gradient, I can easily do that. Now, this is all well and good, but what if I want to add a little bit more nuance to this particular gradient? Well, this is where you go into your gradient editor, and now you can start to manipulate your gradient. So once I click on that, it's going to bring this up. Remember now, I'm set on foreground and background. So if I change this here, it's going to change here, but I can also change it here as well. If you click on these little handles, it's going to show you the current color. Now, if I click on there, then I can also make the edit here in my color picker. Now my gradient has changed, even though my foreground and background have stayed the same. So it's a way to kind of override what's happening here in your foreground background color. But you can see that based off of these parameters up here, it's going to prefer them over your foreground and background. Now, If you'll notice inside of this little dialog box, you've got several different options. These are the default gradients that come with the program, and in each of these folders, you've got different preset gradients that have been created for you. Now, the cool thing about this is that you can also make your own. So as you notice, I created a custom gradient here. Now, if I wanted to save that because I was creating a project that I was going to reference this and I didn't want to have to create it every time because that might introduce inaccuracies or inconsistencies, I might call this, my gradient number 1. And then I'm going to go hit this new button right here. And notice it has grabbed a swatch from here and thrown it into my gradient editor so that later on, if for some reason I get twisted around and I pick a different one, or let's go real extreme, let's just go something completely off the wall, and I want to go back to the gradient that I created, there it is ready to go for me. Now I can apply it and there she is back again. All right, so that's how you save a gradient and that's how you edit a gradient. Let's look at a couple other things. You can also use gradients as masks, and we've talked about masks in some of these other lessons, but let's see how that applies to something like this here. So if I go ahead and grab, let's just say any old adjustment layer, and we're gonna say levels, right? And I bring that up kind of uniformly, but what if I only wanted to apply to kind of maybe a portion of the image? Okay, let's say something like this here. Let's bring those highs a little bit down so our skin is not so blown out. All right. Well, I can apply a gradient, and in the same way, you would maybe with a paintbrush paint off and on some of your mask. You can use a gradient, grab your gradient tool, and then drag across. Now, the thing about it is you want to use black and white because, again, you're painting on a mask. Black conceals and white reveals. So if I go in here, notice that it's kind of gray tone, and that's because I've got a color in there. So we don't want to do that. So let's go ahead and clear that out, turn that back to white, and let's go ahead and change our gradient back to black and white. And if you'll notice that there is a preset here for black and white. Now, if I go in here with my gradient tool and I paint on to my mask, you'll notice that the gradient applies. So you know what, let's do this a little bit more extreme so we can kind of see what's happening a little bit better. Go back here, grab my gradient tool, drag, and you can see that it is taking off where the black portion of the mask is. It's taking off the effect. Again, black conceals, white reveals. So black is concealing the levels effect that I have applied to this layer. All right, and again, in the same way, you can still grab your brush, but it's going to give you a much harder edge depending on what your brush parameters are set at, okay? So we want a smooth transition here, right? So I'm using a black and white. Now, if one thing about the black and white layer is that it's not cumulative. So basically, anytime I edit it, that is going to just change the mask that is already in there. Now, what if I wanted to add to this mask, but I also wanted to use the gradient? Well, in that case, instead of using black and white, you're going to use your foreground to transparent, okay? Now, what that's going to do is basically eliminate this background. Instead of going black to white, it's going to go black to transparency. Now, if I go back in here and add that back on, let's do this. Let's invert this. Okay, so that it is being blown way out. Now I'm on foreground to transparent, and what you can see is that where I start to where I finish is the distance of the gradient that's going to happen. So what I like to do is go past it just a little bit because it is a fade and there is a bit of a transition that's happening. You can see that now it's starting to take off some of that highlighting effect. But again, like I said, with the foreground to transparent, we can add it. It's cumulative. So notice what happens right here as I add another one. And then I'm going to add another one. And then I can add another one. Now you can see what's happening in the mask is that foreground to transparent is adding to my mask. I can even edit it in here so I can maybe get a clearer understanding or visual on how the mask is being applied.